Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome to this week's edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, here on this Thursday, January 19th of 2023. Well, there's no other way to really kick this week's program off without remembering and briefly discussing the tragic loss of Jay Briscoe, one half of the Briscoe brothers tag team, primarily in Ring of Honor. But really known around the world. And Jay passed away in a tragic auto accident a couple of days ago. And really been tough to find the words really to accurately, depict how I'm feeling or how other wrestling fans might be feeling, especially if you've seen Jay and Mark, wrestle over the years. He's an incredible talent, but even better, father, husband. And, a lot has been said over the years about Jay, and rightfully so. And Jay, I do believe to his credit, corrected any of those mistakes that he has made in his life. And for it to be then cut short, I think is just an incredible tragedy. But, try to remember the good times about Jay Briscoe. The Briscoes, one of the, probably the best tag team that's never been to WWE. That's not the Young Bucks. Just incredible matches over the years with Kevin Steen and Adam Cole. And, you go through the litany of the people throughout Ring of Honor's 20-plus year existence, and the Briscoes have worked them. They've wrestled them. They've won. They've lost. They've bled. Their last match of a 3-match set against FTR, unbelievable. Double dog collar match. An interesting note about that dog collar match is that Brody Lee's final major match was also a dog collar match. Kind of eerie. In some sick way, poetic. But I don't know, a lot of the thoughts and prayers were pouring in over the week. And Jay Briscoe will be greatly missed by the wrestling community, his family, his friends, which are a whole hell of a lot of people. Myself, other wrestling fans that have grown up watching the Briscoes do what they do. And really nothing else to really say what hasn't been said already. Just the outpouring of support for his family going forward. So, rest in peace to Jay Briscoe, a tag team talent, single star, husband, father, gone way too soon. Now it's a lighter fare as we get into this week with Monday Night Raw 30. Raw is XXX, which don't Google that. Or, Google it. See what happens. Coming up next week, it's going to be an interesting 30th anniversary show for the Raw brand. Well, the WWE just company in general. Should be a fun night. And as we go through the week that was with SmackDown and Raw, accordingly, I think Raw 30 is shaping up quite to be the interesting show. I think there's some red herrings, and I think you're going to see something interesting. But I digress. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. You can follow the show or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, or to go to juicysteen.podbean.com if you'd like to subscribe that way. I also have an Instagram page dedicated to majority of my wrestling t-shirts, but I talk wrestling on there all the time. That's at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram. Outside of the ring, which is how I'd like to kind of begin, most of these shows, if I've got anything, I just want to tap into the Vince McMahon coming back to WWE of it all. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're going to sell. If they do sell, who's it going to be to? When's it going to happen? Is Triple H really going to be head of creative still? I don't know. So you know what? Let's talk about that when we cross that bridge next time. This is a wrestling show, not a sales show. SmackDown, I thought was very, very interesting. We finally now, on the Raw side of things, we now know that the Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio will get a chance at the Raw Tag Team titles at Raw 30. Don't know if they're going to win, but I like that the Usos are now defending titles per brand. It seems like we're turning that leaf into someone's going to take these titles. And on the other side of it, the SmackDown tag titles, which have been also held by the Usos for this entire time, they're going to be put up in a match where the opponents will be determined in a tournament. And it seems as if the Banger Bros, see Raw XXX, will be in the tournament. And I do think they will end up getting the shot at the SmackDown tag titles, potentially winning at some point. I just don't know when that title shot will be. It all depends on when they plan on the bloodline crumbling piece by piece leading up to WrestleMania. We'll get there as we go to Raw. I don't know if the titles will actually be split before then, but it'll be a nice storytelling device, so I'd like to see it happen. I'm just going to pick through some SmackDown topics. It seems to me that Bray Wyatt is going to face Uncle Howdy at WrestleMania. That seems to be the news that I've been gathering. However, I don't know necessarily if that's what I want to see, unless they got something big up their sleeve, in which, Bray Wyatt's storylines have been quite fascinating, quite polarizing over the years. And I don't think WrestleMania this year will be any less polarizing, especially if Uncle Howdy could be Bo Dallas. If it's not Bo Dallas, I don't know who else it is. But with Bray, you never know. It's always interesting, and it's always must-see TV. I'm looking forward to it. And speaking of the guy who he'll be facing at the Royal Rumble in the Pitch Black match, sponsored by Mountain Dew Pitch Black, that just came out back on shelves, LA Knight, who will he fight? Who will he go into a program with if he does after Royal Rumble? This is, I think, is a way to get LA Knight potentially a win in a quote-unquote Pitch Black match, or loss in a Pitch Black match where it doesn't hurt Bray if he loses, and it doesn't hurt LA Knight if he loses that match because of the type of match that it could be. We don't even know what the hell it's going to be. So I think win or loss, where does LA Knight go? I think it all depends on, is he in the Rumble and that match? I don't really know. But I think depending on if he wins or loses will give you a slight idea. I think LA Knight, and we'll get to Royal Rumble predictions next week, but I think LA Knight wins against Bray Wyatt. Again, maybe Uncle Howdy interference, what have you, and that kind of sets Bray and them off. But on the other side of it, I think LA Knight will then be able to advance himself into a program with somebody. Who that is, I have no idea. I've got a note here as I've been... formatting this podcast has been quite interesting. I'm doing the show solo, at least for now, and I'd like to get some guests on as we, progress and evolve going forward. But for now, it's just me kind of taking notes on these weekly shows and seeing stuff that I've picked up on throughout the week and kind of just run down my notes in a spoken word format. So it's kind of, all over the place, but I try to make it tight-knit. as long as we're in the same show, I'll say as such. Killer Cross, I thought, this past week on SmackDown as he dressed down Rey Mysterio, was dressed like a combination of IRS with a trench coat that seemed to be what Sean O'Hara was rocking whenever he was trying to do the Devil's Advocate gimmick in 2003 that got canned. However, I think Killer Cross is pretty good on the mic, and it'll be interesting to see where the Rey Mysterio Killer Cross angle goes from here. I think that Sonya Deville is going to have a push coming forward. Now, I don't know how far they'll take it. I don't know if she'll win anything going forward, but I'd like to see her get some more time on screen, especially in regards to maybe combating Adam Pearce as champion. Gunther and Brock Lesnar, I do believe, needs to be a WrestleMania match. And if it doesn't happen, I think I'll be greatly disappointed. I don't know if Gunther needs to be champion, an IC champion at that, for that to happen. But I do think an impressive performance in the Royal Rumble could set up something to where he's a formidable foe for Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, and I do think those guys could have quite the Haas fight. And lastly, I do believe that in the bloodline of it all, Sami Zayn, I think, needs to be the one that turns on the bloodline and not the bloodline turning on him. I think it's been set up that the bloodline kind of welcomed him in, didn't want him there, but he's in. And now it seems that there might be some turmoil. And if that's the case, will Sami Zayn end up turning on the bloodline? Does he think he needs to help Kevin Owens at Royal Rumble? I think we'll find out, and I think it'll be quite the scenario. As we now check in to Rampage, also, quick update on the audio. If you're hearing a slight background noise, that will all be settled and taken care of in the future weeks. Again, just getting some kinks worked out here as I try to formulate not a studio, but just a setup of this podcast. It's very DIY. It's very, kind of run-of-the-mill, do it in your garage type, garage band type thing. So I do apologize, but the audio will get better. Quick couple of notes from Rampage this past week. Honestly, it's all about the main event. The Rampage main event with Anna Jay and Ty Conti versus Ruby Soho and Willow. They had a killer match. A lot of blood, a lot of guts, and a lot of people kind of didn't like that Ruby Soho looked like Terry Funk at Barely Legal 97. In fact, a lot of people were not happy with it at all, being, turned off by it and this or that. And to me, I say, you have a problem with that type of material, don't watch it. Eric Bischoff has once said, and he said it quite a bit, wrestling should be a buffet. There should be something for everybody. There should be some comedy, some high flying, and this and that. If there's something that's not for you, and you know it's not for you, or you don't find it interesting, let them know that that's not for you and change the channel. Don't complain about something that they put on thinking that it will appease some section of the fans. If you're not vocal enough about it changing, it will never change. So, now something in that match that was not great, at least for half of the people involved, was the Anna Jay getting powerbombed on the concrete floor through a table in the match near the end of the match, where she hit half of the table and really her back just went cement first spine first, smack on the cement. Looked brutal, but it's the professional wrestling business. Anna Jay's tough. She'll get through it. As we progressed to Raw on the 16th, this is where we're going to start getting some interesting stuff. Raw 30 next week is shaping up to be quite an interesting show, especially for the stuff that they have announced. But more interestingly, for me, in the stuff that they haven't announced. The stuff that they've announced so far include Becky versus Bayley in a steel cage. Should be fantastic. They've announced Austin Theory versus Bobby Lashley in a United States title match. They've also announced legends at Raw 30. You know, the Bellas, Ric Flair, Teddy Long. My question is, for the segment that they've dubbed the Bloodline Acknowledgement Ceremony, where all of the generations of the Bloodline will be covered by way of attendance. You know, everyone will be present that's in the Bloodline. I'm sure Rikishi will be there. I'm sure the Usos will be there. I'm sure Sami Zayn will be there. I'm sure Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, of course, will be there, being the head of the table. I would almost wager that the Wild Samoans, I believe Alpha Sika, I always get them confused, or if, you know, I don't know who else they could possibly bring in other than maybe Jacob Fatu. Outside of those guys, it were to seem to me that there's one guy that's not mentioned that truly embodies the Bloodline. And that's one Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Will The Rock show up at Raw 30? Will he come trying to claim the head of the table? Will he step up or step back from the Tribal Chief if they do interact? I mean, if The Rock comes out at Raw 30, it would be quite the spectacle, quite the news story. For a while, you know, man, well into this Roman Reigns WrestleMania, or Roman Reigns WWE champion run, the past couple of WrestleManias have been mired with who's he going to face? Will it be The Rock? Will it be, you know, whatever? And only now, as we approach WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood, that it would be the perfect culmination of the Bloodline storyline if The Rock were involved. I've said it before, and I don't know if I've said it on this pod because I've only done this podcast for 2 episodes now. But I believe that the point of contention here, the way that it should go if you want to make the fans go home happy both nights, which is what they did last year for the 2-night WrestleMania, and how I think they should always be trying to send home the fans happy for these 2-night WrestleManias. I think on night 1, you have The Rock versus Roman Reigns, and you could have it for the Universal title. You could have it for sure for the Universal title. I don't see a problem with that at all. And I think you have Roman Reigns defeat The Rock straight up. I want to say clean, because that would really, I would turn Roman Reigns is on such a level right now, and if he pins The Rock clean in the center of the ring at WrestleMania night 1, that would solidify his status as one of the greatest of all time. I firmly believe that. But that gets us to night 2. And how do you say that, you know, night 1, oh, The Rock lost. How would that make the fans go home happy? Because they just saw The Rock wrestle potentially his final, last real match. First time in a ring in 10 years since WrestleMania 29, where we've seen countless rock bottoms and people's elbows and torching a sign made for him with a giant flamethrower because his movie insurance will never let him do a full schedule of WWE again because he got hurt during that WrestleMania 29 match. I think if you're a fan and you're at WrestleMania this year on Saturday night and you got to see The Rock wrestle Roman Reigns for the Universal title, head of the table versus arguably the greatest sports entertainer in the history of the company, I think you go home happy with that. And if that's the case, and Roman retains, you got night 2. Which will lead me into this next point. You know, I've been watching wrestling for, I'm almost 30, so I want to say 30 years, but I can only remember maybe my early formidable years of 3 to 5 where I can remember anything about wrestling. But I know that I was in attendance at the June 10th, 1996 Nitro where Kevin Nash, got up on the announce desk area behind Eric Bischoff, and Scott Hall said, well, turn around. And, the landscape changed around there. The measuring stick changed. You're looking at it. I was at that event, and I've been a fan, quite honestly, that entire time. 25 plus years, let's say. And I've seen so many solid, worthwhile, goosebump inducing, chill inducing, scintillating, captivating, emotional surprises that have dazzled and have been played over and over again on WWE TV forever. Those great surprise moments. Edge returning at the 2020 Royal Rumble after never thinking he was going to wrestle ever again. John Cena returning at the 2008 Royal Rumble a mere 4 months after he was supposed to be out for like 10 after a surgery. Edge coming out of Survivor Series 08 after being out since SummerSlam. CM Punk coming back after 7 years of not wrestling. And yeah, they even said this was the worst kept surprise in all of wrestling. But it still was a surprise. They didn't announce it. And now we even see, John Cena coming out on SmackDown. He's going to have another match. And yeah, I know. It's for the ratings. The ratings are important. The ratings might be most important. Especially with these TV deals that could potentially be in limbo, depending on who wants to purchase WWE. I digress. Is there no art of the surprise anymore? With all the surprises I've just laid out for you, and it was like 3 or 4, most of this happened at the Royal Rumble. Because you don't know. If you're hurt in the summer, and it's a bummer, and you have those WrestleMania aspirations, but you might be able to make it a little earlier than that, what better way than to be put right back into things in the storylines and right back in the thick of it in the WWE? You have your Royal Rumble return. The buzzer goes off after a 10-second countdown on the screen. You get the entrance pop, you get that big moment, and you're really thrust right back into where you were. You never, as if you never left. Those moments seem to be less and less as we go forward. I don't know if it's the regime's fault. I don't know if it's just a lack of guys that they want to surprise people with. But to me, I think, and this has been the criticism of the last couple of years is, we get so close to the Royal Rumble and it's like, well, there have been 25 guys announced. And it's like, what? Why? Wait, you're announcing 25 guys? So I know that and the odds are, when you look at that list, maybe 2 to 4, maybe 5 of those guys that are announced have a legitimate chance to win. All due respect to the other competitors, but let's be real here. So you're going to tell me almost all of the competitors before they come out. So I'm waiting knowing which ones haven't been announced, and then you're waiting for a surprise, and then they might fall flat because you were given so much. And that leads me to this point, which goes into my part 2 of night 2 for WrestleMania this year. After 3 separate hype videos, very reminiscent of the Triple H 2002 tearing his quad, MSG return pop, mega return thing, Cody Rhodes is now announced that he will be in the Royal Rumble. Why? Why did WWE feel that they needed to announce this? Why did they not have Cody show up as an unannounced surprise? We all saw him at Hell in a Cell. His pec was destroyed, but he gallantly, heroically, undeniably fought through that injury and had a hell of a match with Seth Rollins. But we knew he had to have surgery. We also knew that the odds were, if he gets cleared through, he'll probably be ready for the Royal Rumble in January. It's January. We're 9 days away. And now we know that Cody's going to be in the Royal Rumble, which brings me to a two-pronged effect. I have no problem if Cody Rhodes is announced in the Royal Rumble because, one, the odds were, he was going to be in the match. I knew it, you knew it, everybody pretty much knew it. Kind of like CM Punk returning to wrestling, although not as extreme. It was one of the worst kept secrets in wrestling. And then the other part of it. Maybe this is how WWE tries to swerve everybody. Like I said with the United States title match, and the steel cage match, and the tag title match at Raw 30, I think those could be red herrings for the real segment, which is the Bloodline acknowledgement ceremony, which could involve The Rock in some capacity, whether it be via satellite or in person in Philadelphia, which, having the Royal Rumble 2015 Philly crowd destroy Roman Reigns for him winning, and then having The Rock come out and put him over as, this is your guy, and still getting booed. It's quite the interesting arc where we could see Roman Reigns and The Rock have a huge segment leading to the opposite of Roman Reigns versus Rock match at WrestleMania this year. So with those things that I would consider red herrings for that, I think that the Cody Rhodes being announced for the Royal Rumble is purely to satiate the ones that could be in the Royal Rumble as a surprise that will happen. I think that WWE has quite a few aces up their sleeve. And no, not aces and eights, just aces. Potentially Edge. Potentially Matt Cardona. Potentially Jay White. Among, Rick Boogs and some other people that could just come back from injury. Maybe Naomi in the Women's Rumble. I think if you announce Cody, now everybody's going to be hyped to hear the music, even though they were anyway. Now it's confirmed there is no Daniel Bryan at number 30. That's not Daniel Bryan, and it's Rey Mysterio, and they boo him out of the building in Pittsburgh. It won't be anything like that. And in fact, I think it'll be even more of a pop now that you'll get Cody for sure. But it begs the question, who else will be in the match? We'll find out in 9 days. I think that as we transition, I think that the Hurt Business reunion is imminent. And with that, I also believe that Omos could have the Diesel spot in the Royal Rumble this year, eliminating maybe 6 to 8 competitors, but still losing. I think he needs to... Look, if WWE thinks that Omos has a spot on this roster as a giant in the realm of a Great Khali where it's just the size and it's the spectacle of him. He needs to have a big showing in this match. I don't think he ever needs to win a title. He's already got enough going for him, but I think he needs to do something that proves that he can beat more than just Elias or local talent every week. And I think they can do that. Fun little note here. As I look, and then they announced some of the things for WrestleMania going forward, some promos for WrestleMania this past week. And they had some hype videos with WrestleMania, and it seems to me that Less Than Zero off of Dawn FM, the latest album by music superstar The Weeknd, this will be the 4th consecutive WrestleMania theme song performed by The Weeknd. At WrestleMania 36, it was Blinding Lights. At WrestleMania 37, it was Save Your Tears. At WrestleMania 38, it was Sacrifice. And now this year, it is Less Than Zero. Hell of a run for The Weeknd. And what better way to have a 2-night weekend WrestleMania with The Weeknd performing. He won't perform, but it's cool to have The Weeknd doing songs for the Weeknd show. 4 years in a row. That's crazy. That really is crazy. You think about it. I mean, I was discussing wrestling with someone a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden, Big Time by Peter Gabriel came on, and I was like, you hear that? WrestleMania 22! And the theme songs for WrestleMania used to always be so... And I'm not saying that these songs aren't hype. I think Sacrifice, Save Your Tears were great. Blinding Lights was okay. It was just trying to nail the popularity as it was hitting its stride. And then this Less Than Zero is also a great track. And they're all great tracks, but I liked when they were almost more selective and they were more stingy, and they really had a selection process, it seemed, for the songs that went through, because the uniqueness of some of the songs over the years really made some of the song, like every time I hear My House from Flo Rida, a song I would never listen to on my own. If I hear that, I'm immediately transported to Dallas for my first WrestleMania that I attended at WrestleMania 32 in 2016. And it was such an incredible time. What a fun atmosphere that whole city was. And to hear that song in every bar for the whole weekend. And same goes for Greenlight at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. Give me the green light. We were saying that every hour, it seemed. Like every bar, it was just song, green light, green light, green light. Every time we're at a green light, we sing it. And I kind of miss that. So maybe for WrestleMania 40, they'll pluck something that wasn't The Weeknd. But, hey, Weeknd's top artist out right now. I don't see a bad thing coming from The Weeknd and WWE's partnership, although it'd be cool to see The Weeknd perform in a WWE show. I think that's a huge opportunity that maybe they're thinking about, maybe they're not. But I would pull the trigger on The Weeknd performing at WrestleMania if they had that option, but I don't know if they have that option. Although it's being in LA, I wouldn't put anything past them. And finally, a little bit of a Dynamite quick run through here. A little over 960,000, I believe. Actually, I'll get that note for you right now. This past week's episode of Dynamite. The ratings were, as we get some dead air, I believe it was 960,000. Let's see. 969,000 was the rating for AEW Dynamite this past week, which In a week where Raw did okay with that Cowboys Buccaneers playoff game. They were lucky that it was kind of a blowout. Dynamite did okay. Still are not cracking that 1 million per week. I mean, they're hitting it every now and again, and they seem to be on a stride, and then they lose it. I'd like to see them crest that 1 million again, but and then 900,000 is still okay for now. There was a quick Jay Briscoe tribute on the show. Young Bucks wore Jay armbands. I believe they hit the Jay Driller in the match. Top Flight defeated the Young Bucks, which I thought was quite the interesting move. But hey, young talent gets over. Young Bucks don't need to beat everybody anymore. They're established. And I think, luckily, the Top Flight, they're both healthy. I think it's a very nice win for them going forward. And maybe that'll push them into a potential title match with the Acclaimed, who are still on the run of a lifetime. We'll get Danielson versus Cage on Rampage. If you're listening to this Friday tonight, which should be good, and another match where, and he defeated Bandito in a hell of a match, as he's continuing this path of anybody that MJF has to put in front of him to combat the potential 60-minute Iron Man match. If Danielson were to beat all those competitors, getting tougher and tougher as we now get Brian Cage on Rampage. The final match of the night was Darby Allin retaining his TNT title in a great contest against Kushida, formerly the Time Splitters. Another great in-ring match. The cannonball plancha thing into a armbar on the outside was brutal. Darby is just he always takes unrelenting punishment, but it was really prevalent in that contest from my vantage point. And that's all I got, I believe. I think that's all that I could really compile from Dynamite this past week. Was very tough with the sudden passing of Jay Briscoe. I believe they flew in a lot of talent last minute to Fresno to do a Jay Briscoe tribute show, and I do believe they're going to do some more of those going forward. And I believe all the proceeds will be going to his family. Hopefully that, I would like to see a proper show, an actual show, maybe not on pay-per-view, but if it were pay-per-view or whatever the proceeds could be, could go to his family. And if you could get talent from all the companies, I think it would be great to see. Because there's a lot of guys in WWE that really had, some good times with the Briscoes and Ring of Honor, notably, Seth Rollins, Tyler Black, who, the Age of the Fall in 2008, 2007, 2008, that stuff might never have come to fruition at such a height if it weren't working with the Briscoes, who were, again, the stalwarts, the legends, if Ring of Honor, you think of Ring of Honor, you think of the Briscoes. And I always just think and remember of we're going to Ring of Honor tapings and the Briscoes come out, and the Ring of Honor barricades always had the metal plates around the guardrail so that they would make some noise whenever you hit your hand off of them, and they kind of told fans to get into the spirit of it and make some noise on these guardrails. And it was always fun when the Briscoes would come out, you would hear the man up, man up, man up. And I don't know, I just remember that, and the vibe of the Briscoes was just, you knew you were going to see something crazy, you knew it was going to be violent, you knew it was going to be potentially very bloody, but you knew you were going to get a hell of a show if you saw a Briscoes match. And it's just really tough. Like I mentioned before, I've been a fan of wrestling for over 25 years, and I've seen countless wrestlers from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and, even 2000s pass away way too early due to violence, substances, what have you. But something like this, it's just a little tougher to stomach and to really take, because it was almost avoidable. It could have been an avoidable thing. And I know that's easy for me to say as I just sit here talking about it. But, accidents are tough. And, you make one mistake, it might just be your last. And it just sucks all around. It really does. So, that'll be the end of this episode of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, and once again, hopefully you guys can rate and review this episode and my podcast in general on the Apple Podcasts app. And give it that 5-star rating. Hey, if you like the show, drop a review. That'd be great. You can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. Love to talk wrestling with you there. And I'd also encourage you guys to follow at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram. If you guys would like to chat wrestling shirts or memorabilia, I'm always on there chatting about wrestling, and I'll be promoting this podcast on there as well. So if you've got Instagram or Twitter, those are the best places to reach me. And again, just talk wrestling. And at some point, I'd like to open this forum up, this podcast up, to get a guest or two on. Maybe not at the same time, but at least one guest on with me at a time. Just to banter, to BS, to just talk shop, about wrestling. I love talking about it and discussing it with people that are in the business, outside of the business, fan, new fan, old fan, all the above. I'd love to talk. So those are the platforms you can reach me at there. And again, this show is on juicysteen.podbean.com. I am Juice Springsteen. This has been the second episode of The Juice Box. And I hope you guys were entertained, and you'll tune in next week for another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.